Welcome to this episode of Lightkeeper's Lightcast. We are always talking to leaders who keep our world together. And today we have with us a very special leader who did amazing work in some of the most needed areas of development. I knew Jack Sim for many years now, and he has been a personal inspiration to me. I invited him to speak to my students, and he really inspired my students as well. You will see that the work that he did is, a kind of neglected work, but a very, very important work. So, Jack, if I were to ask you to introduce yourself, to tell us who is Jack Sim, but I would encourage you to tell us the story that's really intertwined with the story of Singapore, your home country. You were born when Singapore was a colony. While you are telling us about your stories, tell us, how did Singapore feel? How did it smell? How did it look when you were growing up? And how did all that experience made you who you are today?
Thank you. So I was born 1957 as a British subject under the Straits settlements. So Singapore was quite a poor country. GDP is 500 US dollar when we were independent in 1965. Today, our GDP is more than 100,000 US dollar per capita, one of the highest in the world. And the process of transformation from third world to first world was very amazing. We have a British bucket system when we were in the village, and then we moved into flushing toilet in public housing. And today, Singapore sanitation sewage treatment is the state of the art. My name is Jack Sim. I'm the founder of the World Toilet Organization and also the creator of the United Nations World Toilet Day, 18th of November. When I first started, I was school failure, so I became a salesman. I was a school failure because I have ADHD and the teacher is always asking me to stand outside the class, so I can't possibly pass any of the courses. But I became a salesman after school and I did well, and I started to found 16 commercial company, including the Australian International School in Singapore, which started with 32 students and end up with 3,500 students and a 1 kilometer spanking new school, and we sold it for more than $100 million eventually. So after I reached 40, I retired because I found that we're not spending money, we're spending time. And time is the real currency of life, and it's also scarce. And how much time? Each person has roughly about 29,200 days, which is 80 years of useful life. If you live after 80, you're very frail. Your ego might still be there, but your body is probably not going to do justice to your ego. So the issue about living a life usefully would be to make every day count. So I started a countdown on my phone, which is 14,600 days. That's 40 years. Today, I have 3,900 days roundabout, and I'm going to die or at least become useless at age 80. So it's very urgent. So when I first started, I thought, well, if we are all going to die, including my audience here, then how can we be useful? The most useful thing is to do the thing that was neglected. And service is the highest value exchange for time. Human being needs to give love. We give love to our wife, children, pets, plants, country, so we can give love to everybody else that we have never met. And I was looking for which is the agenda to spend the rest of my life on. And I realized that sanitation was a big problem. 2.5 billion people did not have access to proper sanitation, and about 1 over million people die per year from diarrhea alone, which is quite unnecessary if you have proper hand washing and sanitation facility so that the flies does not transmit diseases to the food of the children and the feces does not pollute the water bodies and the rivers. So all these things need us to speak about. But they call the agenda a water agenda, which means that they don't say water and sanitation because sanitation is a brown issue, is a non-charismatic agenda, whereas the water is a blue issue and everybody loves something glamorous. So even development problem has got its class consciousness, has its a high class and low class classification. I mean, nobody would say words like shit and poop and poo and toilet, and therefore the subject becomes neglected. Whatever you don't discuss, you cannot improve. So this problem accumulated, and I thought, okay, since I'm not going to need a salary, I could talk about this subject because the other people in the NGO sector, they have to pander to the donors' whims and fancy because fundraising is so difficult in the NGO sector. So they call it water. We say, if you call it water, why don't you say water and sanitation? They say, no. If I say water and sanitation, nobody's going to give me money. If I say water, I assume that everybody knows that I mean water and sanitation. Then I say, in that case, you should only say men. Don't say men and women, because when you say men, everybody know you are talking about women. Is that true? They say, oh no, the women liberation has happened and we have to talk both about men and women. Then I say, in this case, I have to liberate the toilet. So I created the World Toilet Organization 25 years ago, 2001 on 9th of November. And that day, we name it the World Toilet Day. 13 years ago, it became recognized unanimously by 193 countries at the UN General Assembly as the official UN World Toilet Day. So this is what roughly summarizes the journey.
This is always inspiring, and although some of these stories I've heard before, it's just really hearing you speak with them as a true light keeper is truly enlightening. Jack, I just wanted to go back to some of the things that you've mentioned because there's so much to unpack here. So you talk about your schooling days and years and where you were sent outside the classroom, and also I continuously seeing you on LinkedIn, specifically whenever someone says Singapore has the highest ranking of higher education or other education, you actually come very strongly at them. So if possible, if you would really say a little bit more about the experience that you had and what kind of learner it made you, but also to comment a little bit about this notion of having a world-class education that's usually measured by, ranking, rote learning, and things like that. Because I felt that this is almost another passion, almost like the toilet to you. So if you could say a few words about that, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, so in the past, maybe 100 years, we have been, or even longer, we have been testing people based on their memory of what is taught. And all these educational system, schools, universities, K-12 and pre-U and universities, they're all teaching you how to regurgitate and how to analyze and how to remember. And if your memory is not good, you are considered not very intelligent. But actually, a child or any human being has multiple intelligence. Yet the educational system narrow their intelligence in only analytical memory tests and regurgitation. In fact, it gets terrible when before you say something, you have to quote somebody who has said something long ago. You could have to say Michael Porter 5 forces. But you cannot say, why is that Michael Porter 5 forces? Why not unlimited number of forces? They said, no, Because Michael Porter is from Harvard and he's so clever, and you don't ask stupid question except to say Michael Porter 5 forces or 4 P's. Why 4 P's? Why not 400 P's? No, you can't do that because the textbook says so. So university student has to start to surrender their curiosity, their courage, their compassion, and they have to conform. And this is the process of stupefying a human being who has multiple intelligence, but only limited and tested and rewarded on examination grades. So that was already quite difficult in the past, but roughly a blunt tool where you can reward somebody for his discipline in study and punish the ones that are creative and rebellious and misfit. But now, in the past, we wonder why is our manager or CEO such nasty people, such arrogant people. Although they are not very clever, but we have to report to such not clever people because they have very good Ivy League university degree. So we tolerate, and the entire efficiency of the system is caused by talented people unable to surface, even in politics. And in fact, the worst is in politics. When they are very intelligent, they don't actually get to the top. So what happened is that was bad. Now it's worse. With the advent of AI, all this analytical memory test, the regurgitation, is completely useless. So if you pass the test by QS ranking, by Times Higher Learning, by PISA score, you are measuring the wrong things. You are measuring ancient traditional method that is totally archaic and irrelevant. And yet, parents send their children, force them into tuition classes, and push them into this higher learning institute. I would say academically, the higher learning and the lower learning are all flawed. The only thing I can say, if you go into a good university like, let's say, Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, it's because you don't go there to study. You go there for the elitist network that give you friends and eventually give you some support network where you can pick up a call and say, hey guys, we were schoolmates before. I think those are the values of university if they don't change.
Yeah, this is remarkable, and probably we'll talk a little bit more about it. And Jack, you work in bringing to the fore and shedding light on the sanitary issues and toilets has been, for, as you said, for the past 25 years. We know it has been so successful. It's made toilets available to many people who otherwise would have not had that access. And that changed many aspects of their lives, including access to education. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But specifically now, I wanted to ask you, was there a moment or a period in your time where you knew that this is the area specifically that you want to contribute in? That's the first part of the question. And secondly, have you ever doubted that you'd be able to make a real difference in such a huge and complex and sanitary agenda, and whether the doubt was internal or the doubters were outside? So this is the two-part question, if you could help me address.
So I was not looking for any particular agenda. I was just looking to be useful. And I have to find the things that people don't like to do and it's necessary to be solved. So I found toilets, sanitation, and I focused on it. And the result was good. The last 25 years, 2.5 billion people have access to proper sanitation. The population have grown 2 billion more during this 25 years. And also the definition of safely managed sanitation is higher than proper sanitation. So we have to not just have a toilet, but make sure the water, the wastewater, the fecal sludge is treated and recycled into useful applications. So if you ask me, it's all about low expectation. If you give yourself low expectation, high aspiration, you will not be stressed. You will be able to keep going to say, since I can't make things worse, I can only make it better because it's already so bad. So I can only make it better. Of course, when I first started, it's impossible to know that the impact could be so large. And so each day is just an incremental surprise. Sometimes you get very frustrated with bureaucrats who keep blocking you with rules and regulation. But because the mission is so important, you just carry on. But it is how to get the strength to carry on is that you know that it is not about you. It is about solving the problem to improve the health and quality of life of these people that you never get to meet. And I think that necessity becomes a mother of invention, and it gives you energy to keep on going. The other thing is to know that time is getting shorter every day, and I'm going to die, and therefore I have to keep using this time. I cannot save it, and therefore it's quite joyful. In the end, you enjoy the success, you enjoy the frustration as well, because without being frustrated, you will never know that you are successful. There's always yin and yang contrast. Yeah. So I don't doubt about anything because I don't have the expectation. So a lot of people who go with high expectation would somehow face an imposter syndrome, and they will say, would this be my duty? Am I so good? Shouldn't it be somebody else? But if you don't have high expectation, you only have high aspiration, then I think it's a quite enjoyable and fun journey. No stress.
Very remarkable. And Jack, because I know so of other stories, you know, how you use the World Toilet Organization as WTO. And I still remember when you showed my students a picture that you had with the real president of the World Trade Organization. And you always, you know, have this really truly remarkable approach to life and learning, and including having this countdown meter that you put. I think it's a very simple yet quite an impactful idea. I'm going to hand you over to Yekemi to continue asking you the other questions that we have. Yekemi, over to you.
It's been very inspiring hearing your story so far, Jack. And I can only imagine that when you started talking about toilets, people would have laughed. It would have been an uncomfortable conversation for many, people shying away from it. And perhaps some of the comments and rhetoric weren't very kind. And even the water and sanitation sectors refused to engage with the subject for many years. How did you convert that kind of ridicule and humor into reach that actually became a strategy for growing the message of what you were trying to do, Jack?
So the trick I learned from another man who has done it before. He's called Mr. Condom Michai of Thailand, and he successfully promoted condoms. So I went to Bangkok to get some mentorship, and I asked him, how can I break the taboo of sanitation the same way you broke the taboo on condom? And he says, you first of all have to make people laugh. And then you have to laugh at yourself. And when people laugh at you, you enjoy laughing at that together with them. Because when they are laughing at you, they are listening to you. So the worst thing that can happen is there's no reaction and they don't know what you're talking about. But the moment they start laughing at you, you are successful. So I use a unique blend of humor and serious facts. And when they laugh, we break the ice. When we tell them the serious facts, they get shocked and it moves them, and the incentive starts. And so then once they are no more afraid of talking about toilet or shit or poop, then they are free and we can all talk about what to do together. And the more you talk to the media about it, of course, like BBC, they don't allow you to use shit. but in America they do, and in many other places. But no matter what language or words, the message goes out to hundreds of millions of people. And when they listen to it on radio, watch it on television, read it on the newspaper or magazine or on the social media, it become a movement. And so the reality about creating movement is to get everybody else to do the job. If you do it yourself alone, the maximum capacity is your capacity. But if you orchestrate, then all the music start to play in concert.
Such a great point there around it not being about an individual's capacity, but really something that becomes a movement, and then you make change really through a community of people that are like-minded. So you proposed the UN World Toilet Day to Singapore's Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 2009, and I understand that was rejected as inappropriate. However, 4 years later, all 193 UN member states voted for it unanimously. What happened in those 4 years? What do you think that gap teaches us about the timing of bold, innovative ideas?
Actually, it was 13 years in the making, because on the first day when I declared that today is World Toilet Day, that was the first day of the World Toilet Organization at the first World Toilet Summit in Singapore with 15 countries delegates. And that day onwards, every day, I hope that it can become a UN day. And it took a lot of years of rejection, not just of Singapore government, but also by the Japanese government, by the German government, by the British government. Nobody wants to take this resolution to the UN. And I'm just an ordinary person. The only members are countries. And so I have to wait for this opportunity. The lesson to learn is that if you wait long enough, it will happen. But you have to keep your eyes open every single day. So what happened was in 2011, the Foreign Affairs Minister, Mr. George Yeo, lost the election. And I say, that is the day. He lost the election, so he's free, and so I can invite him to see what I'm doing in China, in the Hainan Island, which is the Hawaii of China, the southernmost province. And we have a World Toilet Summit there. And when he appeared, he saw 1,000 government tourism officials meeting at my World Toilet Summit in Hainan, fully paid by the Hainanese government, and they pay me 50,000 US dollar for the rights to host my event, pay for the event, and run the event. And he says, and all the paparazzi were there. And he says, Jack, I don't understand. You have no official status. We never gave you any ranks or something like that. How did you create this power? And I say, well, every year we have such a scale of a meeting, and always it is hosted by a government. And why? If you spend 350,000 to 500,000 US dollar, you get a very good event. Then you get the whole world to come to your city. And then you get the media coverage worth about 30 to 50 million dollars. Now the investment of 300,000, $30 million, that's very, very good return on investment. And even more interesting, the politician will never have to pay for it. It's either through the government funding or by using his image, his clout, attract the corporate sponsorship. I don't really care how they pay for it. I just give a hosting rights for somebody who can do it. And so the party secretary of the province was there, and governor and mayor. And then George Yeo asked me, I got to do something for you. What is it? And I said, that is the reason I invited you here, so that you can ask me this question. And the answer is, I would like you to call Ministry of Foreign Affairs to say, let's proposed World Toilet Day at the UN. And so he said, I'll call. And he picked up his phone and he called. And sure enough, the other guy at MFA told him that, this Jack Sim, he's ridiculous. He wants me to embarrass ourselves at the UN, and Singapore can't possibly go to the UN to talk about toilets. So I'm not going to meet Jack Sim. But George Yeo said to him, I'm standing here, I'm looking at all this thing that is happening, and I can tell you this is powerful. And I would request, although I'm no more your boss, but would you meet him for half an hour? And if you don't like it after half an hour, you just tell him no. So they say, okay. They met me. It became a 1.5 hour meeting. They say, Jack, I didn't know you doing all this. The reason I don't meet you is I never know you're doing this scale. And I say, you will never know if you don't meet me. So now you met me, what do you do? He says, we will support. And then we mobilize every of our ambassador around the world to become the salesman for World Toilet Day. And we got unanimous adoption. That was how it happened. Look for a window of opportunity, leverage on it with another event to impress the person you want to mobilize, get that person to impress another person who refused to meet you, and then get that person to mobilize all the ambassadors to do it. So this leverage model is something anyone can do. You just have to keep thinking in an ecosystem manner. And that is where the educational system of rote learning and single direction, correctness, conformist will never give you this kind of thinking.
I love the story of tenacity, this idea that just seems impossible or ridiculous, and how by having that passion and clear messaging, you've been able to engage and influence people at the highest levels. And earlier on, you talked about 2.4 billion people gaining access to sanitation. And I mean, that number is absolutely massive and almost around a third of the world as it is today. And sanitation is deeply tied to gender and safety and dignity, particularly for women and girls. Can you share a little bit about what a world would look like in the absence of a safe toilet, especially for a woman or a girl?
Yeah, I just came back from Nigeria 4 days ago, and I have to be there because I meet the new president and the new Minister of Water Resource, new permanent secretary. And all my hard work in 2019 helping the Nigerian Clean Nigeria campaign has come to a stop because the government changed. So we have to start to re-educate everybody again. What happens when a woman don't have a toilet? In India, you get peeping Tom, you get rape, you might get raped and murdered because the rapist doesn't want you to identify him. Am I just going to the toilet and get killed? This is ridiculous. In Nepal, I'm working on washable menstrual pad because the girls, they cannot afford to buy disposable pad. It costs too much. And they use newspaper, old rags, they use packing material. So ridiculous. Leaves during menstrual hygiene. Who is talking about that? This is another big taboo. And I think having traveled to 67 countries so far, not to visit the Eiffel Tower and their touristic monument, but to visit the toilet. This is my job. I've seen more toilet in the world than maybe everybody else. And it comes from no toilet open defecation to very, very bad toilet condition to public toilets that is full of shit. And we have to look at all these things and be very optimistic and say this can be solved, and talk to the politician very clearly about it and design motivation for them to use this agenda to win election. And how do you get them to use the agenda to win the election? By driving the demand, by telling story in the media so that the public wants to have toilet. And once the public wants to have toilet, the politician will promise and hopefully provide the toilet. So this leverage again, I don't have to do anything. I just have to tell stories. I just have to design incentive for the media to sell stories, for the politician to win election and be popular, for the bureaucrats to have cost-benefit analysis, evidence provided by the academia who's either publishing or perish, and then the development bank to get their loan portfolio so that they can sell enough loans so that their donor is satisfied that their loan portfolio is quite spread rather than neglecting on sanitation, and then move the NGO and the corporate with the CSR and ESG. And when you orchestrate everybody, including the local community, the world works on itself, because mutual exploitation is collaboration and collective selfishness is selflessness. What is needed is the orchestrator.
You've spoken about collaboration and you've talked about leadership, and you've said, this is not something that one person can go off and do. And what you've achieved is as a result of a community of people who are like-minded, who have, really helped with reach and helped to actually execute on the strategy when it comes to toilets and sanitation in the world. But we do live in a world that is, I would say, kind of obsessed with being a leader in the sense of being the one that has all the ideas, that does everything, that gets all the glory. And yet, from your story, it is clear that forging collaborations is key. How do you hold those two things in balance, being a leader, which you clearly are, and forming collaborations to actually get things done?
Well, you have already provided half the answer. Everybody wants to be recognized for good work. And therefore, since they want to recognize for good work, why don't I help them get even more recognition for even bigger good work? So now it's not to ask people to stop being selfish, but to ask people to be even more selfish. And the moment you are able to facilitate them to want to be even more recognized, the energy will go up and make everybody hero. And you are the orchestrator. You don't need to be a hero. You need to be a factory that produce heroes every day. And if you are the factory, nobody knows where your Louis Vuitton handbag came from. They just know that you got a Louis Vuitton handbag. It's not important for the orchestrator to be in the forefront competing with the people who wants the recognition. You must help the people get recognized, get profit, get their aspiration, and then everyone gets toilet. You must be not important in order to do important work. The mission is higher than you and you are going to die. So what's the point of being stealing the limelight? No point. It's better to get the job done.
Such important lessons for anyone looking to make lasting and meaningful change. Thank you so much, Jack. I'll hand over to Ian.
Yes. Thank you for that. That was so motivating. So much here to sink our teeth into. And I hope the audience is finding real value in this. I feel the vehicle of your life and what you've done is emblematic of being like a sanitizer of the public discourse. That's how I see you, the arc of your life. I still see you as a young man, by the way, with a lot of territory ahead of you. I see you, yes, as a lightkeeper, how we've described this podcast, as a sanitizer now. But I also sense, Jack, you're a fighter. Sometimes when we speak of diplomacy and being a lightkeeper and doing things that uplift individuals, we need to remind ourselves that that's not from a place of weakness. It comes from a place of a desire to fight for the people who don't have a voice. And so for me, as I think about that wee boy that you're talking about, just standing outside of the classroom and not feeling like you fit in because, as you've spoken about the ADHD, uh, I don't like terminology where we talk about disorders and things like that, the Ds and things. But for me, the dignity and the determination, maybe those are the Ds that we talk about in the ADHD. For you, as you think about that period of time, and maybe even still now, just as an engine behind your creativity, that relentlessness that you have, still boundless energy, you still have a lot of energy to give. How much of what you built do you think was possible because of how you are wired, of who you are? If you think of that young lad outside the classroom, what, not in spite of it, but how does it inspire you?
So I was basically an outstanding student because I was standing outside all the time.
Nice. Good way of looking at it.
When I received this honorary doctorate at the University of Strathclyde in Scotland a few years ago, 5 years ago, it was, I gave a convocation speech that bad things can be good things. So when I failed in school, I didn't learn all the conformist uh, lessons. And ADHD can be very irritating to the teacher when you are young, but it is very good when you are an adult because you can do multiple things and you did want to do more and more all the time. And you can, and you can focus on each one of them. If you build a team and do the part that you can do and leave the boring work to other routine work to other members who are more capable in managing and follow up. So I think that ADHD is a superpower for an adult. It's difficult for a child because the teacher don't understand. And as I grow up, I run 16 companies, manufacturing, trading, real estate development, Australian International School, and there is no stress because you just want to keep on doing something else, something more. And now with the World Health Organization, I'm also doing a lot of other social impact enterprises. And I want to move to the next step of ending global poverty for 4 billion people. And how do you do that? Actually, it's so simple. You just copy all the solutions that are already found somewhere in the world. And every problem of poverty development is already solved by somebody somewhere, whether it's microfinance or value added downstream manufacturing or solar energy to give them power or public policy or financing system or technology. Everything is found. So you have to only to copy the best in class solution, adaptively implement in new location and use the existing NGO as distribution channel. Because the NGO that keep on looking for funding, they're not going to find money anymore. FCDO in the UK has cut down budget. This USAID has closed down,
Yes.
and
Yes.
JICA and GIZ and the philanthropists, all this donation money, they're gone. So what you need to do is social enterprise and then commercial enterprise. And market should not be only at the top of the pyramid. You go down to the base of the pyramid, the second lower half of the 4 billion new customer. And here's a completely blue ocean. And the interesting thing is that if you want to solve this 4 billion marketplace, it's less competitive and actually more profitable. You know why? An NGO overheads is around 60 cents to 80 cents per dollar. A business overhead is roughly 25 cents. If you have an overhead of 25 cents competing with somebody with the overhead of 60 cents, you beat the NGO hollow. And especially when the NGO is running out of money, you can go into this market and take the whole market.
Love that response, Jack. I love the arc of your response. So you start with the humble beginning and then you go into where you arrive there. For me, it's we use this term of one having a chip on one shoulder. We can have a chip on our shoulder, but in your case, I think it's you have a ship on your shoulder in the sense that you just launch, you go forward, you take the journey. So if we can get our audience to think of, yes, being a light keeper, yes, being a sanitizer, a fighter, but having a ship on your shoulder versus a chip on your shoulder. In other words, just, go forward and journey out into the world. And that your response just it was emblematic. It was like a ship dock and then launching out into the world. So that was beautiful. And when you talk about a blue ocean, that's always going to motivate me. So thank you for that reference. So I don't necessarily want to refer to your age, although I do have it here.
I'm 69. Yeah.
Okay, 69. That's a fantastic age. And you were talking about dying and passing away and leaving a legacy, etc. You're still building, you're still teaching, and you've talked about this World Toilet Index as the next chapter, ranking every country's sanitation progress. What does a world with genuinely universal sanitation for you look like? I do believe that you will see it. It will happen. But how do you see that? Just tell us about your thoughts. You're leaving such a great legacy behind. The residue of your life will have real implications for people that are not yet born. And so in that sense, your life will continue. You talked about death, but I think your spirit and your life will live on well before your body departs. I have no doubt of that. But tell us about how you see the future as you think about that universal sanitation.
I think that the universal sanitation is just a basic necessity for a basic
Mm.
quality of life, which everybody must have. Just because it's the cheapest medicine in the world, it prevents people from being sick. Any cost benefit analysis of any government policy should prioritize this because sanitation costs money, but no sanitation costs more money. Just like
Hmm.
education costs money, but no education costs even more money in
Hmm.
crimes and in joblessness and redundant youth. And therefore, I think that because it's a necessity, it has to happen. And of course, the faster, the better. If it can be solved within my lifetime, that's fine. If it has to take longer, there is enough momentum that will continue to drive it. So what I'm doing now is I'm 69 and I've employed for the first time an executive director professionally to convert the World Toilet Organization from a founders-led NGO to a global institution. And to do that, we need to put in good governance. So I have invited 3 more board members, 2 of them formerly from the Gates Foundation and 1 in Africa, in Ethiopia. And we are going to have board members on different parts of the planet so that it's very spread and also gender spread, right? And with this institutionalization, we also need revenue, which is not so difficult because now the World Toilet Organization brand is very large. So we are now going into a certification program and this quality mark program. So if we are able to create those branding, we will have enough money to grow the NGO and to ensure that perhaps it could have enough money to run the show like an endowment. So this
Yeah.
the structure organizational part. The future of toilet should be a diagnostic center for your health so that instead of going to your annual checkup where you give the feces sample to the doctor or the urine sample to the doctor, you actually could diagnose directly from just doing the simple thing of going to the toilet to pee and poo, and the samples can be collected either intrusively or non-intrusively, but your habit is just to go there, sit down, do your thing and flush or wipe and flush. And then the data goes onto your phone. And if you are able to have the early detection of
Hmm.
your health condition, you would be
Hmm.
able to arrest it. You don't have to spend too much money later on. Let's say colorectal cancer at stage 1 is very cheap. And your insurance company don't have to pay too much. And so the insurance will be very happy if this kind of diagnostic do happen. So every time I think of something, a technology, a human quality, then I think of the stakeholder, the financing, the motivational system, and the implementation, the product industrial design. And if you think like that, most problem can be solved.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, the idea of the lightkeeper idea, the concept, which comes literally from a person who keeps the flame of the lighthouse burning, comes a point in their lives where they have to pass that on and allow somebody else to play that role, to be the lightkeeper. And that's sort of the origin of this whole conversation. And I think you're doing. I like the conversation because we have a combination of your personal story, your values of leadership, but also then right there, substantive conversation, ideas of your expertise on this very policy issue. And I think that's unique to this particular program that we're doing here. Of course, I'm here in Washington. There's a lot of expenditures and appropriations related to military activity around the world. And it's not for me to dispute. What I will say historically, these are remarkable levels of expenditure, never seen before. The lack of dialogue for me related to development, humanitarian engagement, girls' education, lifting economies around the world is lacking, and the expenditures that used to go. What is it? What would you say to leaders? What do you think they need to know? Or if you've walked into many rooms and many chambers, what are they missing? Why are they so consumed by conflict and the waging of conflict, and less about lifting people and finding ways to help those who are vulnerable and in need? What are leaders missing?
They're not missing. They know everything why they are doing things. I give you an example. When Brazil didn't have funds for improving their wastewater treatment plant, so 50% of their shit are not treated. They just flush it. It goes in front of the drain in their house. And the whole neighborhood is smelly and the flies are going everywhere. And it's really quite untenable. The politician knows that the favela situation are like that, but they're waiting for an incentive to act. They don't necessarily want to act because they love the people. They want to act if they win popularity. And so I explained to them that they would be very popular if they pass this bill to allow privatization of sewage treatment plant, and then the mutual fund, sovereign fund, insurance fund, they will all be able to invest. And then you don't have to do anything. You just pass this bill and you'll be so popular. And out of 79 senators, I have 65 votes, and the law passes in 2019 at our World Toilet Summit in Sao Paulo. And then it now attracted 44 billion US dollar investment into Brazilian wastewater treatment plant. And the target $150 million when all of the sewage plant is invested. And Singapore GIC, Government Investment Corporation, also invested. The politician just have to know that they are
Yeah.
going to win the election. Come to America, they are funded by the military industrial complex with weapon manufacturer, Boeing, Raytheon, all these people who make bombs. And so they have to listen to those people who make bombs. But if they realize that they can win the popular vote without taking this money, maybe that will change the game. But as at today, it's not possible. So the
Yeah.
world will continue to have war because America needs the war to win elections. So what can we do?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think what we do is what you're saying is we just elevate the profile of the work that you're doing. It's there. People are doing good things in America and around the world, and we just need to ensure that younger people, students, see a world in which they can get engaged and involved in the type of things that you're doing. We need to be, this podcast is about helping people to understand there's a road and a vehicle and a blue ocean to engage with. And that's why your story is so important. Don't be so discouraged, students that are out there, that you can't get engaged in development and humanitarian work. We're just coming to an end here. Let me just ask you this here at the end. Just what do you think, just that the image of a light keeper, of someone who just tends a flame, not for their own benefit. You talked about being selfless, not selfish, but selfless, so that others don't get lost in the dark. If you had to describe the light you've been carrying in one sentence, that's hard. Try to keep it short. I know there's a lot of things you could say, but in one sentence, how would you capture that? And describe the light you have been carrying and you're ready to give as well. Just in one sentence, describe that.
I think it's to live a useful life. And if you're not useful, you're useless.
Okay. We stop. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Jack, as I said, I will never get tired of listening to your stories, and I just wish we had another hour to talk to you, because I know there are so many other concepts I learned from you that we didn't talk about today, and maybe we could have another conversation in the future. But for the last thing, if I want to ask you is, if you could spark one idea in the minds of young people, or even in the mind of one young person, what would that idea be?
I think that peace is possible. And ordinary Americans also want peace, just like ordinary Arabs, ordinary Chinese, ordinary African, ordinary Singaporean. Don't make people different from you. They are the same. They all want to send their children to school. They want to go to buy grocery in the supermarket. They want to look beautiful. They want to have toilet, clean water. Try to deliver social justice by not seeing people as different from you, whether it is skin color, wealth, development status, religion, race, language. Don't stigmatize, discriminate, and stereotype people. They are all like you. I travel 67 countries. I see everybody aspiration are the same. We all want peace, we want work, we want community, friends, and family. We don't want bombs, we don't want hatred. Ordinary American, British, Singaporean should get this message that we are all nice people. Nobody is evil except those who make money killing each other. And we should not support this weapons manufacturer. We should support harmony, love, and peace.
What a beautiful message. Peace is possible, and we are more similar to each other than we think, and our needs are at core very similar, and they start maybe with a toilet. Thank you very much, Jack, for an amazing and engaging conversation with us today. I'm sure many people who are listening to us will find that inspiring, helpful, and hopeful.